Good day. Welcome to the Strong Ambition Podcast. Today, we're going to talk about if you are limiting yourself based on your own belief system with Gavin McHale. Gavin McHale was my very first online training and nutrition coach. He was actually also a former coworker of Focus Fitness, but I really got to know him when he was coaching me in his program. This was during the COVID lockdowns, and he really changed my life. It wasn't just the fact that he helped me with understanding marketing, how to organize my business, showing me how to do a new form of training online, but the mindset shifts I learned from his program forever changed me and made me a better person. And Gavin McHale specializes in this now. He is more of a mindset coach for so many business people. He still helps with the fundamental tools and tactics, but you'll really understand here as we talk about it, what do you do when hard work isn't the answer? And he's going to talk all about that. And even though he does talk a lot about business, and that's where his specialty is, he comes from the fitness world. And we really carry over all of these analogies and how much it fits into training and nutrition. But just think of this simple analogy. You, as someone who cares about their own fitness and health, is not different than an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur has their own business that they're concerned with, the success of their business. They want to grow the health of their business, and you want to improve the health of your business. And your business is your health. As much as an entrepreneur cares about their business and the success of it, you should be caring about your own fitness as well. And the mindset piece is quite commonly just as critical. And so we're going to dive into all of these mindset pieces and how much they carry over for both business people, plus yourself in fitness, nutrition, and training. And so I'll let Gavin really take the wheel on this because he also gives you so many good fundamental tools and tactics that you can take with you to help improve yourself immediately. So without further ado, here is Gavin McHale. Good day, Mr. Gavin. How are you today?
I'm great, man. It's great to be chatting with one of the boys. It feels like it's from the past, our Focus Fitness days, and then our days working together more often. But it's great to chat with you again, man.
Well, the way I see you now, like for sure we used to work together, but I see you as like a mentor. Like you're the person who got me into the online space and completely changed the trajectory of my career. And I also didn't expect it to. And it was like one of the things that so many people will say, the COVID pivot, and so many people had these negative stories and outcomes of COVID. And it was a good thing for me because it transitioned my career so much, and you were a huge part of that. And I got to know you on that level. Like I know when we were training together as trainers, we didn't know each other as well. Like we trained with each other here and there and stuff like that. We really didn't know each other personally as well. And then when I knew you as a coach, I just knew you at a whole different level. And it just seemed like you thrived as a coach. I saw a different side of you as a coach. And why don't we start with this? Because I do give an intro of you being my coach and everything like that. But let's talk about, I want you to talk about yourself more, just a little bit, and give an idea for people of what made you transition into being a coach.
Yeah. So, I mean, we can go way back. I'll try and keep it succinct. You and I have in common that we are the crazy hockey goalies.
Yes.
And I was lucky enough to take that pretty far. And I got to, some people may not know this. I got to the junior hockey level, major junior hockey, which is essentially one step away from the professional ranks. And I didn't know it at the time, but as I got closer to that level of quote unquote everything I ever wanted, I got really scared. And like there was a lot of things that I feared in that I, almost like unspeakable things, right? I couldn't speak to them because it was like, what are you talking about? Right. And so I managed to orchestrate a meltdown that ended my career. I got into a hockey fight, got traded a whole bunch of times, and basically ended my chances at playing professional hockey. Went to university, and really I did enjoy the kind of like locker room feel. I enjoyed science and all that. So got into the fitness space, personal training space, which is where I originally met you at the gym. And I really enjoyed that, but I think I enjoyed it more for the coaching side than the actual like training side. Like you're a nerd on the training side, and I did enjoy that. But I realized that there were people like you who enjoyed it more. And I again, for myself, as I was like growing this business and trying to move online before it was cool, before the COVID pivot, I kind of fell into the same patterns of like getting close to what I said I wanted, and then kind of like imploding or like shying away and going back to mediocrity kind of thing. And that's when I started to notice it. I was challenged by a coach, and he, in a very similar way that how I worked with you. And he said, like, you need to look in the mirror and you need to look at some of these beliefs. And then I started diving into that, and everything changed for me. And I was like, oh man, like I wish I knew this when I was playing hockey. I wish I knew this, throughout my life. These pieces, these mindset pieces, these limiting beliefs, these narratives I had running in my head that were just normal for me, right? I didn't know any different. And so I think what gets me so excited about this coaching is I have firsthand myself experienced the shift from this, in that now, I'm very self-aware, almost maybe too self-aware, and have a very successful business that I'm very happy about. I have somehow written a book on the subject that I know we're going to talk about, but, I love it so much because I've been there. And then I've realized that people across the spectrum, from, your weekend warrior who wants to get in shape to a multi-millionaire business owner, everybody has shit that they need to work through mentally. And I'm just like blown away by it and so excited by it that like, oh, there's places where we can even like turn up the volume for you even more, no matter where you're at. So I don't know if that really answered it, but that's the stuff I get excited about, man.
No, absolutely. And you really nailed it in right off the bat. Yeah, I remember hearing someone mention in the mentorship that you liked training people, but you knew you wanted to coach coaches. And like, it's so funny because seeing after, signing up for all these mentorship programs and how much money some of those coaches make, I was like, I still wouldn't want to coach coaches. Like, I know that like on paper, they actually make a lot more money. I'm like, that doesn't fire me up. Like, I care about the individual. And then you see something in the coach that you want to take a part of you. And that's so important that like, it should fire you up, right? Now, I love how you transitioned your brand from what I can tell to be just more of like a mindset coach to like you're a business coach with a lot of the mindset. How do you feel that evolved? How do you feel like you came less about like the mechanics are still there, but how do you feel like you fit into the mindset piece?
Yeah. I mean, it's still been an interesting transition because I still do, we know what sells, right? Sex sells and money sells. And so on the fitness side, we talk about sex and relationships and the body you want. And on the business side, I still have to talk about money and business. But what I realized, and this is similar in my story with hockey and my story with business, is you can have all the tactics and strategies in the world, right? Like you and I both recognize, having been a part of many business coaching, traditional business coaching businesses, the tactics and strategies are not that groundbreaking. And once you have the foundational pieces, you pretty much have 90% of what you need. And I had all of those from many different coaches, and it wasn't working for me. I was like, why is this guy making the same post and he's getting like 10 leads and I'm making a post and it's crickets? Like, what's going on? But I could have like written the textbook and coached anybody on it, but it wasn't working for me. And that's when I realized that it was because of the mindset. And so I believe, if you really look at a lot of these business coaching programs, any good ones, the majority of the work they do is mindset work. They just don't know it or they don't advertise it. And so I will often work with a lot of people who either are already working with a business coach or have worked with a lot of coaches and it hasn't really worked for them. And that's when I can really because I still love doing some of the tactical stuff, but I do it from a perspective of what the client is thinking, or, how do you want to build your business as a business owner, rather than, let's just go as big as humanly possible, more, which is what we're all getting shoved down our throat. So for me, it's this matter of kind of taking a different angle at the same thing. And I think from the fitness side, you've got a lot of your clients listening to this, a lot of us know the mechanics of losing weight and being more fit. lift more weights, exercise more often in general, like be active, and like eat lots of protein and lots of vegetables, like and drink lots of water and sleep.
Yeah.
Like it's pretty simple, right? Why can't we do it? I believe that's the mindset side. I believe that's what are the stories that you're telling yourself? Where are you falling into old patterns that aren't serving you anymore? That's what I like. And so the transition for me came from my own story, but then also what I was seeing in a lot of the people. I mean, you know it. I was a business coach and all we talked about was mindset, right? Like it was everything that we did because I was like, none of this shit really matters. You know, like it matters to a point and then it doesn't matter anymore.
Or you mentioned the simplicity of training and nutrition is, very not sexy. It's not exciting. It's why social media is filled with crazy shit. It's because if people tell you can only eat meat or only eat vegetables, oh, that's what I'm missing, right?
That's
if you
the thing that I'm missing.
It's the exciting, and actually it will rewire your mindset for desperation more, for extremes. One of the things I didn't really even I didn't realize it until AJ had mentioned it. It's like when you make people fearful of eating food, then it's a motivator. It's like, oh, don't eat, this, it's toxic. And it's like, oh, you could, but like if you're more of a modest, and it's like, you can have some seed oils, it's not going to kill you. Yeah. That's not motivating to have the right amount. And like you just mentioned, like simple doesn't make it easy. Why you're not doing the things that you need to do all the time. And the worst part is, I don't even have the answer. You don't have the answer. You got to find the answer for yourself to discover motivation more than anything. So what are some of the biggest things that you've learned yourself, or, you've seen other individuals have to learn about getting over these big mindset shifts?
Yeah. I would say there's two key things that come from my story that I think a lot of people don't know that they need. The first is, this is Socrates back in the day, know thyself. I mean, so many of us are not very self-aware where we need to be. And so self-awareness, what do I mean by that? A lot of people are like, oh no, I know that, I know this and that and the other, but like, what are the things that your brain is telling you are facts, right? Like our brain will often take beliefs and stories that protect us and will make it seem like it is a fact, like it is a non-negotiable fact, right? Like, I don't have good time management, or, what's the big one? I have bad metabolism.
Yeah,
right?
bad metabolism. Yeah, so I'm broken.
Yeah, I'm broken in some way. Or, for us high performers, us business owners, I'm not good enough. Right? So these are all stories that we tell ourselves to keep ourselves safe. However, our brain makes them seem so real that many of us aren't even able to uncover them. And it stays stuck deep in that subconscious, and we just keep on rolling with our lives. And one of my favorite quotes is from a guy named Carl Jung, who's kind of like the OG of modern psychology. And it's, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you will call it fate. And so many of us think that. It's like, well, this is just the way it is for me. I guess this is just how it is. And if we can uncover those stories, if we can make the unconscious conscious and become aware of our limiting beliefs, our stories, and our patterns, then everything changes. Because when I change the belief that either I can't control myself around junk food, well, if I believe that I can't control myself around junk food, then I can't be anywhere near junk food ever, right? But if I change the belief that I'm becoming a healthier version of myself, I am working on controlling myself around junk food, I can eat 5 potato chips and be okay, then the actions become easier. It becomes easier to stick with a nutrition plan or a workout plan. Right. But if I'm constantly running on this foundational belief that I don't have time, or I'm not good enough, or I have bad metabolism, everything is going to direct towards that, because that's the way that we have this part of our brain. I'm just going to give a little bit of we've got the subconscious brain, the conscious brain. The subconscious brain, many people don't know, is 95 to 98% of your brain, right? So that's all the stories that we tell about ourselves and our identity. And the connector between those two is called the reticular activating system. And this is, if anyone's ever heard of the red car theory, right? If I tell you to go look for red cars, you'll find red cars, but you never found them before. If I say to you right now, Ryland, how does your left big toe feel? You're thinking about your left big toe. Your reticular activating system tells your conscious brain what to focus on. So if I have a story in my mind that I'm whatever, my reticular activating system is only going to look for evidence that that is true. It's going to reinforce that cycle. And until we can break that cycle, we're going to constantly fall into that same, why is this happening again? Why is this happening to me? So that's number one. We have to uncover our patterns and our beliefs. Number two, that I believe, and I've been seeing this even more very recently with business owners and fitness folks, is what I call emotional regulation, which starts with emotional awareness. I see so many people, we often believe that the most successful people fail the least. Like, it's this fallacy that we have, right? Like, oh, Ryland's super successful in powerlifting because he's never failed. Like, he's just good at it. Like, he's better at it than me. Well, the fact is, I wouldn't say you're necessarily better at it than me. You just have more experience, and experience comes from failing, making mistakes, missing lifts, right? Like doing stupid stuff that has hurt you in certain times in your life and learning from it, right? So emotional regulation, I think a lot of times people fall off, or they experience difficult times and they completely fall off the ledge, right? Like they totally go off the rails instead of recognizing it for what it is, which is a lesson to keep you moving forward. So if we can regulate our emotions and allow ourselves to not have those like high peaks and really low valleys, if we can kind of just keep it a little more close to level, then we're going to be able to go longer, continue to hone our skill, learn from our mistakes. And if we just keep going, then we're bound to succeed, because that's the way this whole thing works. So I think those are kind of the two key things that I've learned and that I teach the most of.
I love the first point so much. And this just reminds me so much of Jason Brooks' red flag statements. And he spoke about it before. And as soon as he said it, I started to pick it up on so many clients, that I can't, there's nothing I could do. And these absolute statements, and then just appreciating over time how impactful, as you mentioned, the subconscious mind is. And this goes into James Clear talk about identity. And when you start saying, I can't control myself around this, so I can't control myself. Like there's nothing you can do. Right. And even just the term of, I'm a binge eater, or I have a tendency to eat a lot of food. Those are two very different identifying statements. And one of those you're really going to want to reinforce, because you can make that its own bias. Like you're gonna be like, hey, yeah, I'm a binge eater. This is what I do. So when you're doing it, you actually just feel like you're keeping in line with your identity. And if you just simply start to, like, the really good sentiment was from Robert Broughton, where he had mentioned, when you talk to your subconscious mind, whether you think you're joking or not, it's like a 5-year-old that takes it literal. So it's like, I'm a binge eater, I'm a fat kid. And it's like, dude, you're just creating that identity for yourself. And so you keep using those words, and then you're going to create the action and be like, I told you so. And then when you mentioned it there with like the emotional regulation, if you say have a binge episode, you have a negative episode, and then you're just in the dumps and you're just angry about it. And then that adds this kind of cyclical event of being mad at yourself because you couldn't do it. And then you try to get some momentum again, the classic yo-yo dieter, but you go hard the other way with that emotion, right? So you're going to go hard into it. And then you binge again hard. And what I always tell people about yo-yo dieting and binge eating is like the very next day after the binge eating, it is the most critical time to do nothing different from a normal day, not to fast, not to work out hard, to eat normal, because you're actually okaying the binge by fasting the next day. You're going to ramp up your idea in the middle of a binge. you will have a thought that says, I guess I'm not eating tomorrow. And then you'll want to eat more because of that exact fact. And then you keep the cycle going. And I mean, in business, it's very similar, where people create these narratives from themselves and identity pieces, and an identity piece that doesn't give you an opportunity for growth. And what you had mentioned about the emotional regulation is like high highs and low lows in business. And it's like, you just always got to know this too shall pass. So it's like, whether you're having a really good day, it's like, okay, save this energy for when the days are bad. This will pass. And then when it's a bad day, this is going to pass too. So the emotional regulation is such a skill. And I think that it takes a long time to develop that. And the other thing too is just like, you'll still feel it, but you just know how to behave around the feeling. And
I think that's the key differentiator, that, like, man, Ryland, you and I are like the same age. And a lot of your clients, like, whether you're 30 years old right now or you're 60 years old right now, you grew up in a time when, if you were a man, you were soft or a pussy if you showed emotion. Mm-hmm. If you were a woman, your emotions were inconvenient for others in your life, namely men. And therefore, all of us were taught not to feel our emotions, or to put them away somewhere where they didn't bother other people, right? And unfortunately, this made us think that we could control our feelings. And there's a big, you talk about these like subtle differences that actually mean something big. We cannot control our emotions. We can regulate them, right? If you experience something and it makes you feel sad, you can't say, no, I'm not sad. But you can accept that you're feeling sad and regulate that, rather than allowing that sadness to build up and lead to something that we don't want, some sort of an action that we don't want because we haven't named that emotion, right? So like, it's this whole thing that all of us learned around emotions being bad in some way, when in reality, emotions are the best GPS system we have to navigate this crazy spinning rock that we live on. Because they're always telling us something, and most of the time, most of us are ignoring them because they were painted as bad in many ways as we were growing. And you and I, as athletes, like, do not ever show or share emotion, because that's weak, right? So we're kind of like trying to overcome that. So all high performers are going to like try and beat down these emotions, when if we can just accept them for what they are, regulate them, and learn the lesson from the thing that happened that led to that, we're going to move forward way faster.
Couldn't agree more, especially when you think about what emotions are. And this is a great idea from Mark Mason. His second book, it wasn't The Subtle Art of Giving a Fuck, it was his second one, We're All Fucked. And it was actually a really deep book on philosophy. And he talks about how every single emotion was actually an adaptation. So how can we say that, anything is negative? And if you think, oh, well, sadness reminds you that you lost someone you care about. That's actually an important thing to recognize. And it allows you to cherish and appreciate what you had. Anger. Well, anger actually is what's going to help you defend yourself or the ones you love in a moment of crisis. And that's exactly what that's useful for. It's not useful for being angry over things you can't control. And that's what being navigating and using the emotional kind of spectrum that we have in appropriate times. And so there are certain times where anger will serve you very well, but that's 100%. Not where but you also can't live there, right? And I even say, like, when it comes to like feelings, like guilt is a common one for food. And I say guilt isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's actually the signal that you've done something not in line with your values. That's when you feel guilty. You lie to someone, you feel guilty. You steal from someone, you feel guilty. That's actually a good thing you feel that, because you've done something not in line with what you care about. The sociopaths don't feel guilt. And so
that's the thing.
Right. And so then when you go and let's say you binged on food, you had a bad day, you missed the gym. That's a signal. You're not in line with your values. Now, do you have to live in guilt? No, there's a difference here. And that is, pay attention to the signal, ask yourself what caused the signal, and coming back to what you said, learn from the fucking thing that happened.
Learn from it.
And that's what people don't really like to do, is they like to say this terrible thing happened, this failure happened, and then they live themselves as a failure in guilt. And it's like, no, that was a moment. And I always tell people, like, there's two versions of you that you're not really paying attention to. Are you the exact same person that you were right before you had that meal? Like before you ate your food, are you now the same person? You're not. You've literally been through a different experience. You know different information. So everything is different about you.
You're actually smarter.
Hypothetically. And so, hypothetically. And so in that case, it's like, then you should forgive that version of yourself for not knowing what you know now. And that forgiveness is key. My sister-in-law, who just graduated with her PhD in psychology, and she was doing her master's in actually paying attention to high-level athletes, showing higher levels of self-compassion when they were not performing well, did better in the sports. Rather than
which
people
who theory makes sense, but we can't practice it.
Yes. Yeah. And you know what? This is the delicate balance, though, because I'm not telling you not to feel guilty. I actually think that the term guilt-free is kind of a fake thing. It's like, it's guilt resistant, right? It's like resilient or appreciating how to know to use these emotions. I still get guilty over food because I went too hard or I did something I shouldn't. But it's like, it's not the panic, right? And, you know, it even reminds me of this conversation I had with a high-level boxer, Brant Butt. And he had over 70 fights, national level, won gold. And I'd asked him, you know, do you ever, do you stop getting nervous before fights? Because I hated that feeling. It's like, oh, you actually always get nervous, but you know how to handle it. And that was a huge thing for me to appreciate. I wasn't crazy for feeling that emotion. Everyone feels it. It's just you become like, this is supposed to be there. I'm about to fight someone. And so whether it's, you know, chasing your career or, you know, nutrition goals, this is a normal emotion. You're supposed to feel it. How do you manage it is the question.
Yeah, and I want to actually make another point as well on the guilt and shame thing. I had a call today with a group of moms who you know, they're working on their health goals and their fitness goals, and I asked them. I said something about like when you make a mistake or you go off track and then you inevitably judge yourself, because we all do. What's the number one thing you feel? And it was like guilt, shame, guilt, shame, shame. Like it was like bang, 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 right? And one of the things, you know, that you talk about there, I'm reminded of a great quote from, I want to say it's someone named Kathy Overman, who says, our nervous system or our subconscious brain will choose a familiar hell over an unfamiliar heaven. And I think a lot of people will become familiar and almost comfortable in that guilt and shame. And now their nervous system is actually trying to create opportunities to feel this comfortable feeling, even if it's the last thing we want in the world. Right? It's like, I don't want to feel, or, you know, I want to make sure that I hit all my nutrition goals and I want to hit all these goals and stuff. But deep down, your subconscious brain is going, yeah, but that's not comfortable. To feel freedom and peace and all these things is uncomfortable for you. So I'm going to make you feel shame and guilt until you become aware of this pattern.
Yeah, that's a real powerful thing that I think people become so attuned to the routine. And I would say the best example I have is like a bad knee pain, right? Or a sore knee, chronic knee pain, right? Chronic back pain, where you don't like it and you feel it after you've done something that you shouldn't. And as like this classic individual is whether they're even exercising, some people will do it with the shoulders, right? They won't stop the bench press. Yeah. But the act of doing something different, that discomfort is unfamiliar to them and they're not comfortable. Their nervous system patterns are not used to it. We're all pattern based. Yep. And so the idea of exploring a new lifestyle and a new routine is more terrifying than just dealing with something you've been dealing with. And although the guilt and the shame feels terrible and you hate it, you clearly don't hate it enough. It's when like the knee buckles out and you blew your ACL, I'm definitely gonna get that fixed. It's when the shoulder's separated, fuck, I gotta go. And I've legit, and I've talked about this before, my dad unfortunately has said a couple times, the only thing that's like, he's like, well, I guess I just got to have, the big ones that actually kind of scare me into it. It's like, that's a terrible fucking mindset for me as your son to hear. Like, the only way you're going to change it is you have a heart attack. And here's the other thing is talking to the trainers that work with these cardio rehab patients. They still don't really improve their lifestyles that much because they didn't really want to solve that problem that bad. They do enough to get out of rehab.
It's more emotionally comfortable for their subconscious brain and nervous system to be a victim.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? That's unfortunately an entire generation of people who being a victim is safe. Like not being able to control and change. Well, and how many, like, don't even get me started on what their doctors say to them. Like, my dad had a heart attack at 47, and he survived it, and he's much healthier now. But, don't get me started on what the doctors say to them, right? About how you couldn't control this at all. Like, had nothing to do. Like, what? Come on.
That's what he got. That's what he got told.
Pretty much it was like, yeah, your genes kind of set this up. Now, you got to be more careful. You should lose a bit of weight and stuff. But like, this was a genetic thing. And like, you give them any shred of that, right? And they take it as, oh, okay, this wasn't my fault. There's nothing I can do.
Well, that right there, nothing I can do it's a red flag statement, right? And
it's a red flag statement, right? It's a victim mentality.
I realize it's such a advantage that I've had bestowed upon me, I think through some experience with you, but definitely some other people in the past, and I think boxing and all that. Like, I've never understand the concept of not trying to control what you can. And so many people get in this mindset that they don't look for it. And, another really good book was, it was called, It Takes What It Takes. I'm trying to remember Trevor and Moad, and he has this thing called neutral thinking. And he actually doesn't even tell you to think about positive thinking, because positive thinking is easily outweighed by negative thinking.
Yeah.
But essentially he's always about like, what can you control? What is the next action step specifically? It's not positive or negative. It's like, what is within your hands and grasp? And it seems like so many people don't look for it. And like you mentioned, they fall into the victim mindset. And I think sometimes you do need to consider, like, because there's, a spectrum of people that are victim to a difficult environment when they have, kids they got to run around with, they got a lot of stress, they got bad genetics that probably does increase their appetite. And so there's so many reasons why fat loss is hard for certain people. But then again, it's that narrative of I have a bad metabolism. It's just a made up statement. It's like, if you simply exist, that's over 60 to 70. Yeah, you have a metabolism. Like, it's over 60 to 7% of your calories. And it's unfortunate that some people get to just be lean and they don't need to think about it. Yeah. But like, that's your circumstance, and you being mad at it doesn't change it. And I do say that I always try to say a caveat that I'm super blessed that I took a passion for. If I wasn't a trainer, I'd be overweight. Like, I honestly think I would.
And that's part of your story, right? You were overweight.
I was overweight as a kid and made me obsessed with it. And it's like, you know what, in this day and age, maybe if I was planning on going instruction, maybe it'd keep me active enough. Maybe I would have stayed in sports. But I do think I'm lucky that I'm so self-involved in this, but my appetite is always there. Like, it is always there. And it's like, I get why people need Ozempic right now in this day and age, because some people do have that. But I also just took responsibility for it. And I see the people who take responsibility for their circumstances are the people who change it. And that's a really important thing of control what you can. So I'd love to dive into the book, because I started to get into it a little bit. I'll be honest, I haven't gotten fully into it, but let's talk about let's talk about the book. What inspired it, and what do people really get out of this book?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing I wanted to write about was, like, I wanted to share some of my crazy hockey stories and some stories that I have from my experience in my life. But I realized that, like, I didn't make it far enough for people to give a shit about those stories, without any other context. So I was like, I need to tie this in and make it mean something. Because, I love reading. I just finished reading Matt Sundin's book, but that's because he's Matt Sundin, right? He's got some cool stories and he clearly made something of his life. And so for me, I feel like I've made something of it, but I'm not famous. So I was like, how can I tie these stories into some lessons that would help people? And so if you look at my story, what I want to do with it, so it's called Consciouspreneur, but the subtitle really is the one that catches a lot of people, is what to do when the hard work stops working. So many of us were taught that it's just hard work. We just need to work harder. Just work harder. Just push harder. It's, you'll get everything you want if you work hard. Well, by that logic, people in third world countries would be the richest people in the world because they work way harder than me or you, no matter how hard we're willing to work and how many weights we're willing to lift and how many hours we're willing to work. They literally work 24 hours a day, some of these people, and they make nothing. So what do we do when the hard work stops working? Well, in my opinion, the number one thing you need to do, and the overarching theme of the book, is you need to stop looking externally and you need to go inward. Because everything we grew up with, whether you played sports or you went to school, has taught us to seek external validation, to look outside of ourselves for the validation that we are moving in the right direction, when the real rub, like the real deal, is that the only validation that matters is internal. And that comes from a level of awareness and a level of recognition of, what are my patterns? What's working? What's not working? How can I work with this, subconscious brain inside of me? And so that's really the overarching theme of the whole book. There's some really cool and fun stories mixed in there, whether they're mine or I got a really cool story about Arnold Schwarzenegger and some things like that, just weaved in to help people understand the concepts.
I think that's great. And I love the subtitle. Like, I just love that you're talking about, because that's what a lot of people need. There are hard workers out there that need to appreciate that it's not just applying more work. If anything, that can get messier, that can get worse, because long hours end up being worse hours. And, so many people try to grind. And it's like, I tell the same people who are working out 5-6 days a week, that's not better. It's obviously not working for you. Yeah. And so to appreciate that, there's layers of this, there's layers of you that's actually way scarier to try to peel back. It's a lot more difficult. Would you have some tips on how people can peel back those layers, how people can really attack that?
100%. Yeah. I think the best way, kind of like the most accessible way to figure out some of these stories and some of these things that we've been talking about, because I think that's one of the things that I always hate about some of these podcasts with some of these gurus and mindset people, is they give you like this overarching theme and then you're like, okay, how do I do this? Like, what do I do? And I think that's where I can help. I help a lot of my clients with that. So the most accessible thing is like, what is frustrating you the most? Like when you don't do something or do something out of alignment that frustrates you, majority of the time we will judge, but can we shift that judgment, that self-judgment, into curiosity? I wonder what's going on here. I wonder what I did there. Why did I do that? Why did I not do that? Why did I binge eat? What did I do? Right? Like, start getting curious, because you're probably going to learn a lot more about yourself. So shifting judgment to curiosity. But the other one, kind of on a bigger picture scale, if we're looking at the stories that we tell ourselves, I'll often tell people, like, what were the inflection points in your life? So like the big things that happened that after that, it wasn't the same. So like maybe your parents got divorced, or you lost somebody important to you, or you got a job or lost a job or something like that, right? There are always going to be some of these inflection points that we experience. And then sometimes life punches us in the face. Like maybe life punched you in the face. And when those things happen or happened, what was the story you told about yourself in that moment? Because we all do that, right? So I distinctly remember 7th grade, I was tall, skinny, awkward, weird, and I was left out of the cool kids group. I distinctly remember it, right? What's the story you told about yourself then? I need to become a chameleon to fit in so that I will be accepted. Right now, that's served me in many ways in my life. I feel like I'm a pretty well-liked guy. A lot of people like me. You know, I can help a lot of people because I can be a bit of a chameleon. But at the same time, that has led to a lack of like self-awareness or a lack of like, who am I? An identity, right? Because I'm just this chameleon, right? So if you can ask yourself, okay, what was the inflection point? And then what did I tell myself? You're probably going to come to a story that you're telling yourself that has probably served you in the past and is not serving you anymore, especially if it's in alignment with what's frustrating you.
I love those. I think those are really practical because, like you say, what is the tool that you need to use? And the first one you mentioned, curiosity, is the way you said that too. The tone is really important for people. Whether it's binge eating, missing a workout, whatever it is, not just what happened and then being mad at yourself. It's like, why did I do it? No. Why did I do it? Like,
why did I do that? Totally different vibe.
Totally different vibe. You're trying to step out, be objective. Remember, you now is a different person. And curiosity, because then you're also paying attention to the signals that lead to it. So it's like, when I'm tired and I don't want to go work out, okay, that's the signal. How can you change that signal to be like, I'm tired, I don't want to work out, but what if I just go for 10 minutes? What if I just go get a light sweat and I feel better? This is the signal that actually I was emotional and that's why I ate. Okay, that's this, but you're never going to pay attention to that signal and you're never going to prepare for that moment again unless you ask and involve yourself. And just like you mentioned, just the idea of like really pinpointing your narrative, your personal story for yourself and how much you identify with that story. One of my favorite tactics I actually want to highlight that you had done in the group to this day is one of my favorite ones was listing out your self-limiting beliefs. And like every day we were doing that. And it was a really practical tool. Like it was really practical because I didn't think I had any crazy ones. Like I really thought I was pretty honest with myself. And then, you just sit down and just try it every day. Try one simple thing that you think is like a fact, but it's actually kind of a belief, and consider the opposite. What if the opposite was true? Where would you be? And it just opens your mind so much. The whole term self-limiting belief, I was first introduced by Jason Brooks, and I was like, just that term, just appreciate that's actually most of your existence. That's your reality. And so if you can reshape that reality, so much more is potential, right?
Because when you think about, like, I think a lot of people will say, let's say people who want to get super fit, they'll look at you, at Ryland, and be like, well, that's for him and not me. Right. And we don't need to get into religion or God or any of that stuff. We'll just call it the universe. Like if you can see it in somebody else, then how can that not be for you? Mm-hmm. Like it's not possible. And the only difference is the belief system. That's the only difference. Like the only difference between you and fat you, like when you were overweight, is that you chose, now you did a shit ton of work in between that time, but the ability to do that work came from you choosing to step into a different identity.
Right.
That's it. You became a guy who lifted and a guy who ate well, and you still eat cookies every day.
Still. And I think just that last sentiment that I think I've heard time and time again, and more people need to sit into, is want to change the identity. And it doesn't mean that there's not happiness over there. I think so many people are afraid that it's not happiness in this new identity. There's more potential for happiness because you realize that you're a very malleable thing and that you can change over time. And like if you accept that bit, like even though it's unfamiliar and it's scary, you accept that you can continue always becoming a new person. That's where you're going to find even more potential happiness that you didn't know you really deserved. But I love this conversation. We'll have to have another chat. I know you got some other place to be. And I'm seeing you at Activate on Friday here, hopefully. Yeah, and we're going to have a good in-person there. But I appreciate this chat. Why don't you let people know where they can find more about you?
Yeah. So if you want to get a copy of the book, anywhere you buy books, Consciouspreneur book, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Indigo, all those awesome places. if you want to just connect with me on social, I put a lot of energy into my YouTube channel lately at Coach Gavin McHale. There's a lot of meditations on there if you want to, and visualizations if you want to dip your toe in. And you can, of course, find me on Instagram at Gavin McHale1. I'm definitely on there a lot. I probably should be on there less. Lots of content on there, but I just feel like that's such short form stuff. I'd rather you dig in on YouTube, you know?
Yeah, get down to the real. So, oh yeah, and the one last part here. Strong Ambition Podcast, what's your most recent ambition?
Oh man, well, the most recent ambition, as you know, I've got a little 5.5-month-old Henry. And,
congrats on that.
Thank you. And the big ambition for me is and I've really worked on stepping into this, and it's a daily push really for me, is to be the most present husband and father that I can be. And that means, truly, even though he's only 5.5 months old, I still think presence is a massively important thing, and not, being on my phone or, saying, oh, I don't have time for this. When I'm with him, I'm with him. Mm-hmm. And that's been a huge ambition for me. And it's quite possibly one of the most challenging adventures of my life.
Yeah. I love that. And I've always kind of looked at, fatherhood, parenthood being the biggest challenge, because I always say that the three biggest things that define who you are in this life are what you're going to do, like how you're affecting the world, like your career. That's one of the main definitions. Who's beside you when you do it? And your partner is definitely going to help define who you become. But number three, who are you going to show how it's done? That number three piece is probably one of the biggest, because it's your legacy. It's you having a direct impact on another life. And that's the biggest one, because you got to pretend like you know what you're doing when it's the scariest time. And
then eventually you can tell them, by the way, none of us know what we're doing.
Exactly. Yeah. None of us know what we're doing. We're just making this up. So
we're all making it up.
Super excited. Well, thanks again for being on here, Gav. We'll have to have another chat in the future. And again, I just got to say, as being one of my mentors in this, I really appreciate you and how you helped me. So thank you so much.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you having me on.
Thanks again to Gavin for that really fun conversation. I always have a fun time chatting with Gavin. And I got to be honest, when I first signed up with Gavin, I didn't know this side of him. I knew him professionally. And as I mentioned in the episode, I wasn't as close. And when I got to know him as a coach, I found a whole different side of him. He really blew me away with how much he understood about, asking the person the right questions and getting them to ask the right questions to themselves. And that's really the key of self-discovery. Are you willing to investigate yourself? And that's your job to do. No, that's what even therapists help you with. That's what counselors and psychologists help you with. They get you to ask questions about yourself. They can't just tell you what you have wrong or right. They have to allow you to open yourself up and to find this self-discovery, because nothing's more important than the flashlight that you point to something. That's where you'll see it the best. So when you think about, some of the things that we talked about, and I want to highlight all of them because they're all really important. So we'll start with red flag statements. Use that term and start to pay attention to them. Because like when you start using a statement that, for example, says, I can't do anything, or I absolutely, had to eat it all, or can't say no to that food, or there's nothing I could do. When you use these red flag statements, and just shout out to Jason Brooks for it, it's giving you no realm of control and no opportunity for improvement. Now, I'm not going to say there isn't days where everything else is more important than getting in a workout. And that is okay. I'm not saying that. But if you go 7 days without working out and you said there's nothing I could do, are you saying that there wasn't a 5-minute opportunity to do bodyweight squats? It's like, because you said there's nothing you could do, like zero, absolute, versus, oh yeah, I guess I could have just done like some bodyweight stuff for 10 minutes here or there. Then there's something you can do. And it's important, because even though you might think that 5 to 10 minute workout, no, that doesn't count. It's not a hard workout. It's like, no, but it actually is important. It is something. When you have a hard time stringing together, 2 weeks in a row of a workout, that's important. And especially when it comes around food, is there nothing you can do at all that makes it a better choice? Well, there's nothing I could do. So I had to go to Tim Hortons. Did you have to go to Tim Hortons? And if you need to, go back to my old YouTube's, videos, and they'll tell you that you can eat healthy on the go. And so the red flag statements are just super important when you're using absolutes and you're using things that don't give you any opportunity of direction of improvement. It's not going to be constructive to help you, especially if it has to do with identifying with things. I am a binge eater, I'm fat, or I'm just a fat kid, or I'm chubby, I'm lazy, whatever it is. And when you start to keep saying that about yourself, you're just going to want to reinforce looking for it. You just look for the excuse to reinforce it subconsciously, not necessarily even consciously, but subconsciously. You're going to want to do that. Now start to use identifying statements that's a work in progress. Watch what happens. It's like, I was a person that had a binge eating issue and I'm working on it. I'm a person improving my binge eating habits. Or don't even use the word binge. You're saying, I am a person who's working on not overeating all at once. Like, as big it is, like obvious as that is, just not settling in with calling yourself a binge eater can go a long ways, because it's starting to create a narrative in your head that you're looking for opportunity to change, rather than staying in the past and wanting to be what the past is. And you don't realize that once you're saying that word, that is an identity to you, you're only going to want to reinforce it more in the past at a subconscious level. You're going to look for a way to. So start to look for identifying statements that are not identifying with what you don't want, but rather identifying the working in process that you're trying to become something new. And just, again, see what happens. As simple as it was, this was and you could try this experiment, something simple. If nutrition training you find really difficult, I still think you should look for it, but try something simple. It could be the one that I used, which was clean dishes in the sink. And I started to use the identifying statement. It's like, I'm not a person that's okay with leaving dirty dishes in the sink at night. It takes me an extra 5-10 minutes. And at first there was discomfort for it. I wanted to go to bed, it'd be late at night, but it's like, I'm not that person. I'm a person who makes sure that there's no dirty dishes in the sink. And the more I did it, and then all of a sudden I got a discomfort. Before, it was a discomfort to do the dishes. Months later, and now years later, if I see dishes that are dirty in the sink, I'm uncomfortable going to bed until they're clean. And that's because I started to tie together who I am to it, and it felt good to do it. And that's what we want to do with our training and nutrition. And when things don't go well, we need that emotional regulation. I love that he hit on that it's like super important that we understand that when things aren't going well, when you're failing, like, that's not the problem. It's how we manage our emotions around the failure. It's how we guide ourselves to use the emotions to fuel you to create the right course of action. I love how he said, be curious with it. It's like that attitude change. Like, why did I overeat? And it's like, fuck, I overate again. Why did I overeat again? Just, okay. Just step outside yourself a little bit. Guilt is guiding you towards the fact that you did something you didn't want to do. Step back and say, okay, why did I do that? I have asked so many clients who have a hard time with things to start a journal. You probably heard me talk about it before, and I'm going to talk about it again. This is the key to exploration in your own insight and mind. I have had really tough days, and then once I've written out on my journal what I was thinking about, I felt significantly better because I shone a light on something I wasn't sure of. And I always use the analogy, which I talked about in the episode with AJ, is journaling is like trying to explore your thoughts and your ideas and emotions. But it seems so scary, as if you're about to go scuba diving in a dark black lake. And you think that there's monsters in there. You think that there's just terrible things that you're going to find. You don't even know what to talk about or anything. But if you were to scuba dive in Manitoba Lake, you would actually probably see a pretty incredible life down there. You would see some incredible things. You wouldn't see monsters. You would see all sorts of cool aquatic life that's unique to that environment. And you'll find out more about yourself, and you realize it's not terrifying down there. I just needed a light. I just needed to see what it was. And when you bring that stuff to your awareness, it becomes less scary and more understanding. And then AJ also mentioned this in that episode. You bring yourself into a problem-solving state. You start to ask yourself, okay, this is the problem. How can I resolve it? And using the emotion, like, to calm yourself down. Yes, I feel guilty. Yes, I feel bad about it. But use that emotion to say, okay, what's the next step? I'm not just going to stay here, feel guilty and emotion, and say, I'm angry tomorrow and tomorrow I'm going hard. No, that's not the answer. It's actually take a step back. It's like, what led us to the cascade of reactions that made us go in the negative direction. Then you be as calm as you can to correct that course of action and to not feel like you have to hate yourself in the process because of it. One of this, I'll go back to, identifying statements too, for this piece, I think was pivotal for me. I stopped allowing myself to use the word hate with anything about my physique or anything about my body or anything about my identity. I wasn't allowed to use the word self-hate. Just wasn't allowed to. I could say I dislike something. I could say I got to improve something. And I could say I'm really annoyed at this thing, but I just wasn't going to use the word hate for myself. Massive change in my identity. Gradually over time, at first it felt awkward. It felt weird, but then it felt more and more at peace with myself. Became more forgiving of myself, became more understanding of myself. And that will give you a great opportunity to change things that you're trying to change. And that's what's so key is like you have to be open to changing your identity because we are just surrounded by these self-limiting beliefs. And so being okay with changing that identity is a really big thing. The self-limiting belief, I'll say again, is probably the key to everything, right? It's the key to realizing that you're not, it's okay that you're your own limitation, but like to recognize where it is. Recognize, okay, this is my limit. This is where I have a hard time. And this is what I got to push against. This is the discomfort that I have to go against. And, I heard this really interesting, really cool concept on the internet. It's on a reel or something like that. And it was essentially about people are so afraid of changing their life and who they are because they're more comfortable with the discomfort that they're currently living than the possibility of this discomfort of a life they're not living. And so the discomfort, the unknown, but the way he said it is like, you just got to remember though, even though it is, doing something new, it's still you there. You're still you, but maybe a better version of you, the you that you're trying to discover, but you need to discover it and you need to try something new to be a new version of yourself. And so as scary as it is to try something new, to implement a new practice, that is still going to be you doing it. And that's also exciting because it's a new version of you because you're trying something new. So don't get discouraged by the fear of discomfort in something new. Be excited by it because that's a potential of unlocking something new within yourself. And I really appreciate the sentiment of his book title, what to do when the hard work isn't working. And I think you should really sit in that and think about reading his book. Like I know I have a copy. I'm going to be digging into it this weekend because I did start it and I'm just chipping away at it nice and slow. And it's already really speaking to me on those terms. And it's super important that we think about what we can understand about ourselves to actually grow ourselves. So I hope you got a lot from this episode because there's a lot of mindset pieces here. Every single one of these ones you can get a lot from. Pick one of the tactics. They kind of overlap a lot, but I'd highly suggest starting to pick it apart. Even go visit Gavin's YouTube. I've done some of his meditations, his mindset practice. I was amazed how much they worked. I really was. I was like kind of into it. I'm like, okay, I'll try this thing. I was like, whoa, I feel way more charged up from this. So it's definitely worth investigating. And I hope you got something from this. I hope some of these things are settling in, whether it's business or personal. We got to appreciate how we can change our identity to become the best version of ourselves. And that's exciting. That's exciting stuff to do. I hope you learned a lot from this. If you appreciate it, please leave a 5-star review. Share it with someone else that you think might be able to, benefit from this mindset stuff. And always remember, I appreciate you as a listener. So thank you so much for listening, as I just want to keep helping you chase your own ambitions. Because we know life is not about the pursuit of happiness, but rather the happiness within your pursuit. And I'll catch you next time.